Right, okay. We're going to make a start now. Just got a message coming up on the screen to say, remind people that I am recording this part of the meeting, of the course. And I say, welcome to everybody who's joined this online course. And oh, hello, Alan. We're glad
Hello.
to finally have you here.
Thank you.
And say this is the online course on the Juche Idea that's been organised on the initiative actually of the Juche Idea study group of Ireland and also the British group for the study of the Juche Idea and the UK KFA. And the idea of this course is to give people an understanding of the Juche Idea. We've got a total of 12 sessions. Each session will consist of a lecture, and then people can raise questions afterwards, and the lecturer will also set questions for the next time, and we are going to be asking people, perhaps a bit ambitiously, to do homework. But the whole point of this is to deepen the understanding of the Juche Idea. So the question is posed, what is Juche? The Juche Idea is frequently ignored in some quarters. If you go to the mainstream media and academic sources of the establishment, you will usually find the formulation Juche means self-reliance, which is an extreme oversimplification. At the same time, in my opinion, a deliberate distortion to diminish the standing of the Juche Idea. A typical example of the garbled, confused, and mischievous distortions of the Juche Idea was a Daily Mirror article in 2017. And I suppose we can be glad that, the Daily Mirror even actually mentioned the Juche Idea. But anyway, the Daily Mirror stated as follows. Juche is the North's ruling ideology that mixes Marxism with an extreme form of go-it-alone nationalism, quote, unquote. The only slight truth in this garbled statement is that Juche is indeed derived from Marxism. As to go-it-alone nationalism, nowhere in the Juche Idea or in any of the writings of the great leader President Kim Il-sung, Chairman Kim Jong-il, and Marshal Kim Jong-un, or in any DPRK policy document does it say we must go it alone. Of course, Juche stresses independence. Juche recognizes that independence is the life and soul of humans. But this is not the same thing as saying that a country should go it alone. What Juche means is that a country should be totally independent, politically independent, and reject subordination to others and dependence on others. This does not mean that cooperation with others is rejected, or that the Juche Idea means turning one's back on internationalism. Far from it. Guided by the Juche Idea, the DPRK has always been internationalist. It has supported revolutionary and anti-imperialist struggles in many countries such as Vietnam, Cuba, Angola, and others. From the so-called left, we hear that Juche is simply nothing else than, I quote, Marxism-Leninism applied to the conditions of Korea. And the implied inference is that there is no point in studying it. Worse still, some even claim that Juche rejects Marxism-Leninism. We will return to this subject in a later lecture, which will examine the relationship between Marxism-Leninism and the Juche Idea. Let's now be done with all kinds of misunderstandings and distortions from the bourgeois establishment, the revisionists and the fake left, and now look at the real meaning of Juche. Juche in the Korean language is a word of two syllables, and I'll also explain in Korean language, one character, one written character represents a syllable. So it's two syllables, Ju, which roughly translates as master, and Che, which means body or oneself. So it means master of oneself. Basically, the Juche idea is the idea that the people are the masters of the revolution and construction. It stipulates that humans are the masters of their own destiny and that they have the power to carve it out. Juche, therefore, rejects all kinds of superstitious and fatalistic notions about the fate of humans either being predetermined or controlled by an unseen mysterious deity existing outside of time and space. Juche came into being through the experience of the Korean Revolution. There were a number of factors behind the emergence of Juche. Firstly, the existing theories of Marxism-Leninism did not explain the realities of a national liberation movement in a small country like Korea. In fact, during the 1920s, the Comintern saw national liberation movements simply as a reserve force of the proletarian revolution in the advanced countries. When the young President Kim Il-sung became involved in revolutionary activities, he keenly perceived two big problems in the revolutionary movement at the time that were hindering progress. Firstly, in Korea, a small country which is sandwiched between big powers such as China and Russia, there was an ingrained habit of flunkism, or put more simply, the sycophancy towards big powers, the idea of looking up to big countries and depending on them. This caused big losses to the Korean nation and people. The feudal ruling class had been divided into factions, such as a pro-Russian one, a pro-Chinese one, and a pro-Japanese one. This contributed to a loss of independence of the Korean nation and its enslavement by Japanese imperialism. Later, bourgeois nationalists tried to win independence for Korea by supporting big powers, such as the USA. This did not work. Combined with this, there were tendencies to just rely on a few top-level leaders instead of going among the masses. Bourgeois nationalists had tried to conduct the independence movement by relying on big powers and also just conducting it among a few top-level leaders. The emergence of the communist movement in Korea, which was inspired by the Great October Socialist Revolution of 1917 in Russia, unfortunately proved to be a false dawn, because the communist movement quickly split into rival factions which competed against each other for recognition from the Comintern and did not conduct revolutionary struggle among the masses. They saw recognition from the Comintern as a goal in itself. The Korean people groaned in despair. The young President Kim Il-sung keenly realized this was not the way forward. The Korean Revolution should be carried out independently and by relying on the popular masses. In his speech, The Path of the Korean Revolution, which was made at Kowloon in China or Manchuria to a group of young Korean revolutionary cadres in June 1930. He explained his ideas and put forward the Juche-orientated line of the Korean Revolution. In the speech, he castigated the factionalists and flunkies, saying as follows: "Experience shows that in order to lead the revolution to victory, one must go among the masses of people and organize them and solve all problems arising in the course of the revolution independently on one's own responsibility and in accord with the actual conditions instead of relying on others." End of quotation. Drawing on this lesson, they regarded it as important to take the firm standpoint as masters of the Korean Revolution, and that the Korean Revolution should be carried out by the Korean people in a way that was suited to their conditions of their own country. This speech was the basis of the Juche Idea and its starting point. And it was at this meeting that President Kim Il-sung stressed the masters of the revolutionary struggle are the masses of the people, and only when they are organized and mobilized can they win the revolutionary struggle. End of quotation. President Kim Il-sung also defined the Korean Revolution as being an anti-imperialist, anti-feudal democratic revolution, rather than being a socialist revolution or a bourgeois revolution. And in this speech, he set forth the line of armed struggle, as well as the original line of the anti-Japanese United Front and the original policy of founding the party for the first time in the history of the national liberation struggle in colonial countries. And from this point on, the Korean Revolution advanced under the banner of Juche. Since then, the Korean Revolution never looked back and never marked time, thanks to the correct line set down at the Cologne meeting in 1930, the line of Juche. The Korean people gained independence and built a mighty independent socialist power of Juche. After liberation from Japanese imperialist rule in 1945, and also the destructive Korean War or Fatherland Liberation War from June 1950 to July 1953, President Kim Il-sung addressed the issue of more thoroughly establishing Juche in the Korean Revolution in his historic speech on eliminating dogmatism and formalism and establishing Juche in ideological work, which was made in December 1955. And he said as follows: "What is Juche in our ideological work? What are we doing? We are not engaged in any other country's revolution, but precisely in the Korean Revolution. This, the Korean Revolution, constitutes Juche in the ideological work of our party. Therefore, all ideological work must be subordinated to the interests of the Korean Revolution. When we study the history of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, the history of the Chinese Revolution, or the universal truth of Marxism-Leninism, it is all for the purpose of correctly carrying out our own revolution." End of quotation. In 1967, speaking to the first session of the Fourth Supreme People's Assembly of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, President Kim Il-sung laid down the practical and concrete application of the Juche Idea to the question of state building and day-to-day politics, saying that to thoroughly implement the line of independence, self-sustenance and self-defense, to consolidate the political independence of the country and strengthen the foundations of an independent national economy capable of ensuing the complete reunification, independence, and prosperity of the country, and increase the defense capabilities of the country so as to protect its security on the basis of own forces by establishing the party's idea of Juche in all fields. And that is from the speech that is titled, "Let Us Embody More Thoroughly the Revolutionary Spirit of Independence, Self-Sustenance and Self-Defense in All Fields of State Activity." President Kim Il-sung defined the Juche idea in a number of interviews with foreign journalists in the early 1970s, notably the interview with the Japanese Mancini Shimbun in 1972. In this interview, he said, "In a nutshell, the idea of Juche means that the masters of the revolution and the worker construction are the masses of the people, and that they are also the motive force of the revolution and worker construction. In other words, one is responsible for one's own destiny, and one has also the capacity for hewing out one's own destiny." End of quotation. As the baton of leadership in the Korean Revolution passed towards Comrade Kim Jong-il, who'd been working at the party's Central Committee since June 1964, Comrade Kim Jong-il took on the work of developing in depth the Juche idea and systematizing it. On the 31st of March 1982, he published a treatise on the Juche idea, which is the definitive work on the Juche, in which I would strongly recommend all participants in this course to read. Indeed, it is really the mandatory reading for this course. And in fact, the work is like an encyclopedia of the Juche idea. It is divided into 5 chapters, such as origin of the Juche idea, philosophical principle of the Juche idea, socio-historical principle of the Juche idea, guiding principles of the Juche idea, and the historic significance of the Juche idea. In the work, Comrade Kim Jong-il emphasized that Juche stresses man's role as the master, saying, "The Juche idea defined man as the master who dominates the world, not merely as part of it, and thus established a new world outlook, unlike preceding ones, which regards the world and its changes and progress, with man, its master, at the center. The Juche idea and stand on world with man in the central place provide a sure guarantee for the independent and creative cognitional activities and practice of man, who transforms the world and shapes his destiny." End of quote. It was Comrade Kim Jong-il who stressed the philosophical side of the Juche idea. Comrade Kim Jong-il also wrote works such as Problems of Education in the Juche idea and on establishing the Juche outlook on the revolution. To conclude, the Juche idea is the idea that man is the master of the world, that the popular masses are masters of the revolution. In practical terms, Juche means Juche in ideology, independence in politics, self-sufficiency in the economy, and self-reliance in defense. In future sessions, we will look at different aspects and tenets of the Juche idea and the principles of the Juche idea. And just to say 2 things to conclude the lecture. Firstly, to quote Dr. Vishwath, an Indian journalist who used to be the one of the Director Generals of the International Institute of the Juche idea, who I met several times, say passed away in 2014. He always would say, study the Juche idea, it will cost you nothing but pay in plenty. And with regards to reading. You know, I've already mentioned the work of Comrade Kim Jong-il on the Juche Idea, and it's also this booklet here. I hope everyone can see it. You know, Juche Idea, answers to 100 questions. That is online in several different places. And you can probably also easily obtain a hard copy of it. Anyway, like to thank everyone for listening, and I will stop now and we will take some questions. Thank you.